I either want to be a vet or a lawyer, but watched Ally McBeal and decided that I prefer to wear nice suits than wellies. My name is Rachel Hobbis and I'm a construction solicitor. I basically advise people day to day on all legal related matters in respect of construction. So within the construction sector, whether it's the procurement, getting into contracts, advising them during the currency of that contract on their position, and then advising them in respect of any disputes that might arise related to those contracts. So I can't remember when exactly I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, but basically from about A-level stage I was on the route to do law. So I didn't actually do any legal qualifications at A-level stage, but I knew that I wanted to do that, so I took subjects that I knew that the degree course would accept. I then did a law degree at university, followed by the legal practice course, which is a professional qualifications course, followed by a training contract, which is a 2-year in-job training position to then qualify as a solicitor. Solicitor qualification. That can be gained through a number of routes. Historically, the most typical way was to go and do legal practice course and then do a training contract. There are alternative ways of coming up to being a solicitor now. So there's recent apprenticeship routes that have now been opened up. You can have a law degree, but it's not necessary because you can do a conversion course, which a lot of people do. You do another degree and then you can convert over to doing law by just doing another year before you do your legal practice course. I think you need to obviously have an interest in the law. There's probably quite an element of being analytical, being able to absorb and sort information, to see the wood through the trees and get to a point quite quickly. You need to have good people skills. A lot of what we do is interacting with other people, whether it's your client, whether it's the other side. It's about being able to read them as far as you can. There'll be a lot of bluffing on positions and people asserting one position that might not actually be the true, that they're necessarily their final position. It's being able to kind of see through that and be quite tactical. And so manage that, very organised, to manage the workload. Whilst you will work as part of a team and you will be overseen by somebody, a lot of your day-to-day basis will be down to you to run your files, to manage various competing interests where you've got different clients who want you to do everything immediately, as well as maybe more senior solicitors demanding that you do their work first as well. So being organised, being able to manage people, being very motivated to to make sure that you're moving your work along. Soft skills, I think, kind of getting on with people. Depending on the area of law you're in, compassion. If you're dealing with people in an area of law such as employment or family or probate, it's very much individuals and therefore it's very emotional for them. And a lot of your job will almost be acting as a bit of a counsellor in some aspects to them whilst delivering legal advice as well. If you're acting for more commercial clients, it's about also having the knowledge to be a commercial advisor, not just a lawyer, but to deliver that in a commercial forum for them. Most people will choose a specialism on qualification after their training contract. So depending on where you take your training contract, generally you do at least 4 seats. So that would be a period of time, so say 6 months in a particular area of law, and you'll be working in that area of law and getting an idea of what that actually looks like and feels like. Some firms do 6 seats, some do 4, so depending on how long the seats are, you'll get more or less exposure to more areas. You'll then look to qualify into a particular area on qualification, and that's when most people will qualify. Again, that will depend very much on how specialist you are, on the size of the firm you're in. If you're in a larger firm, generally you'll be much more specialist much sooner. If you're in a more of a general practice firm or high street firm, then you will probably take more of a broad brush approach to the different areas, and you may cover off a variety of areas or interests in different areas, simply because you'll be needed to do that as the work comes in through the door, but they'll have less staff, and your more general practice. Whereas bigger firms will have specific specialisms, specific departments to deal with those specialisms, and that you'll become very concentrated and specialist in that area very, very quickly. I'm a construction lawyer, and basically I did property to begin with and really enjoyed that, but found that it wasn't possibly something I was going to do long term to keep me interested. I then did some litigation work and again enjoyed that, particularly the property litigation, and then had an opportunity to sit within the construction team, which felt familiar because I come from a background of family builders. So it was an area that was of interest to me, and went into that and just loved the industry, loved the work, genuinely enjoyed what I was doing, and loved being part of the projects and being able to drive past something and say, I did the contract, so that was fairly exciting. So it's also a relatively young area of law, so it was interesting from that point of view. The law hadn't already been decided. It's a very fluid area of law, so you can have quite an impact in what you're doing, and you can use your brain in interpreting where the law could go. So a typical day is probably in the office, and it will be responding to emails, taking phone calls from clients, working on reviewing contracts, negotiating those contracts. Alternatively, it might be in meetings with clients, advising them, or actually attending meetings with them to knock out the commercial aspects of a deal that we then write. So once we understand what the client actually wants, we can then put that into practice and deliver for them legally what they need to do. I also do dispute work, so that could be making submissions in a dispute forum, going to court, instructing counsel to go to court. So quite a wide range of things that I can be doing on a daily basis. Very much client-facing, have a lot of interaction with clients on a daily basis, and that can be from junior members of administrative staff at those clients through to the managing directors of the businesses and finance directors. So a wide range of people carrying out different roles within the businesses. There'll also be intermediaries, referrers, who I will deal with on a daily basis. And then internally I'll deal with finance teams, marketing teams, HR teams, other lawyers, junior lawyers, overseeing the team that I head up. So managing those, making sure they've got the work and that they're doing that, and supervising it. Depends on how you come into the profession, by what route, because there's a number of routes now. If you were to come in as a solicitor without any breaks, the standard procedure would be to go to university, do your degree, come out of university, go into doing a legal practice qualification, whether that's a conversion and then legal practice course, or just straight into the legal practice course if you've done a law degree. Then 2 years training contract to then qualify as solicitor. After that, you then look to progress within your firm, depending on your post-qualification experience, until eventually the kind of peak of your development would be to make partner in the firm, and then to kind of head up your own team and do that. And depending on how long that takes would depend very much upon you, the firm you're working in, the type of work you're doing, a whole load of factors. Most people would look to get to partner probably a late 30s, 40-ish, but some people do it a lot younger, depending on the size of the firm, and your specialism and a whole load of factors. If you were looking to come through the route by, for example, one of the other routes, maybe the apprenticeship course, that takes a lot longer. I think that's 5 to 7 years. So you do you're working whilst doing your qualifications at the same time. There's also what's called the ILEX route, which is legal executives, which is a slightly different route, and you can qualify as a legal executive initially and then become a solicitor afterwards. And again, that's a much lengthier route, so kind of 5 to 7 years, but you will be working whilst you're doing that. At the moment, the training contracts in the last few years have been quite difficult to come by. So a lot of students have come out of university, have done their legal practice course, and then haven't been able to get training contracts. So many of them are what we call paralegaling, which is taking a role as a paralegal, which is someone who's legally qualified but able to do some legal work, but not at the level of a solicitor. And a lot of students are having to do that before getting their training contracts, and it's not uncommon now for people to do 3 to 5 years paralegaling, trying to get training contracts. And that's why the other routes have now opened up for qualification to enable people to be earning whilst still seeking those qualifications, rather than having to pay out for what can be a very expensive legal practice course. So the difference for me as moving up to being a partner is very much more being much more involved in business development and in the general management of the firm and the team that I'm running. So much more involved with being responsible for other people. So not just managing my own financial hygiene and managing my own caseload, but overseeing other people, signing off and being responsible for their work, managing their finances, making sure that that they're working efficiently, that they're getting the money in, that they're billing that work, and then that they're getting recovery of the monies for the work that they build. Business development, so going out, winning work, planning and strategy of the team, where we're positioning that in the marketplace, the type of work that we're going for, putting in tenders, putting in submissions for legal directories. So there's a lot more of that type of stuff to deal with on top of the advising clients on a daily basis as a partner, as opposed to being an associate or an assistant solicitor. You will still be doing a level of business development as an associate, but all of that just ramps up with the additional strategic thinking around the team and positioning the product in the marketplace. I suppose getting a good result for a client, and that can look different depending on the type of work I'm doing. So I particularly enjoy doing something that's a little bit bespoke, that's a little bit more unusual, something that's very commercial for a client. So there'll be an element of work that is a little bit repeat work and kind of a bit run-of-the-mill that you just kind of have to do. But where it gets really interesting is when you're doing something particularly, you're acting on a particularly interesting project, or it's something a little bit different for the industry, at the forefront of the industry, or the client is particularly commercial and you're actually involved, not necessarily advising just on the legal aspects of the project, but also on the whole commercial deal as a wider spectrum, so actually advising the client. So that can be getting a deal through for them so that they can go and do what they need to do as a business and make some money. And if it's dispute work, getting a good decision for the client. So if they've got a particularly nasty dispute where things weren't moving ahead, or it was quite particularly contentious, then it'll be a case of getting them some money, for example, and winning. Managing people, I think. And from that point of view, managing solicitors on the other side, managing clients' expectations. People are often very emotionally involved with issues, and therefore that can be difficult to get them to take the emotion out of it, to look at things pragmatically. It's often quite easy for us to come in and look at it and make a decision quite early on where we think things will probably go, and they usually do, but it's getting the client to that point. So there's a huge amount of negotiation and mediation with your own client as well as with the other side, particularly in dispute matters. And I suppose if contract doesn't come to a head because it's, if you don't manage to achieve a deal, then it's a bit of a shame because you've all put a lot of time and effort in it and you've worked very closely with the client. So I was probably a little bit of a geek at school. So liked to get involved in everything. If there was a committee, I was sat on it. I was a school librarian, and gravitated towards positions of responsibility. I suppose there's always been an element of me that's a bit of a leader in that respect. I also enjoyed my work. I enjoyed getting good grades and getting results. So as for knowing that I was going to come to law, I think originally it was vet or law. So GCSEs were very much across the range, and took a good selection of kind of GCSEs. I then made the mistake, I think, at A-level stage of going for the subjects that I thought I needed to keep my options open to go for potentially the degrees that I wanted to look at, instead of going for the A-levels that I genuinely enjoyed. I was very fortunate to get very good grades across the board at GCSE, so took the view that I'd done fine and therefore could do any A-level that I wanted to do, and it was my choice. That was a mistake. What I should have done was done subjects that I liked the teachers and that I genuinely had an interest and enjoyed, because I did slip at that level because I took on too many A-levels, and I took on subjects that I possibly didn't enjoy and didn't get on with the teachers, and then saw grades go from kind of A's and drop, which was quite a shock. So I managed to resolve it and sort it out. But had I been able to talk to my kind of 16-year-old self, I would have said, don't necessarily do chemistry just because you might need it. Do subjects that you genuinely enjoy, because A-levels is a completely different game to GCSE, and you generally need to have a real passion for the subject rather than just do it because you think you can. So if I could speak to younger me, I would say don't be so caught up on going and doing a law degree. I was advised by school to go and do a geography degree because of the type of university I could have got into. But because I knew I wanted to do law, I said, well, I know I want to go and do that, so I don't see the point in wasting a year. But looking back, I think that wouldn't have been a bad thing to have actually had a different interest and something to add, particularly at the moment where law is very, very competitive and it's very, very hard to get a training contract. I think the more you can show something different about yourself, that you haven't just gone through that route, that really makes you stand out. So actually, I wouldn't have been so quick to necessarily think it's only a year. At the time when you're younger, when you're 17, 18, it seems like a huge amount of time, but when you look back, it's not. And if that meant that I could have perhaps had different experiences, gone to different types of universities, and that could have maybe stood out at a later stage, that would have been something worth considering rather than being quite dogged about going straight for law. So my career's advice to you would be to speak to as many people as you possibly can. Genuinely do something that you love. You're at work a long time, so if you're not doing something you enjoy, then it's very boring. Try and find out about what areas are likely to be good job prospects in the future. Talk to people who are in the areas now, so they will have an idea of where the market's going and what the market will look like in the future. Don't necessarily look at the jobs that are there now. It's about what jobs could be coming out in the future as the world evolves.